Okay, so get this right. We're talking Nuremberg, Germany, April 14th, 1561. Sunrise. But something's off. Way off.
Yeah, instead of, the sun just coming up like normal, the sky is basically exploding with that. Well, it's a spectacle. People are going to be trying to figure this one out for centuries.
And that's what we're deep diving into today. But it's not just some weird event, just something strange that happened. This is like a snapshot of what people were freaking out about back then.
Yeah.
We're talking the Reformation. The Catholic Church is like falling apart, right?
The whole foundation is cracking.
Exactly. And the source. A 16th century broadsheet, think like an early newspaper kind of deal, printed out, passed around, and it's got this incredible woodcut image on it.
Describing, what everyone saw that day.
So imagine, right, you're there, Nuremberg, you're a good Catholic, a real believer.
Yeah.
But everything's changing, like the world's gone crazy. And then this thing in the sky.
I mean, what would you even think?
I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah. It's interesting, because this isn't just some old story people tell. This is a huge event. Tons of people saw it. And the details.
Oh, yeah, they didn't hold back.
No. They said it described many men and women.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, and not just in the city. Like inside the city walls, but outside too.
Okay, so all over the place, everyone's seeing this.
Yeah.
And like, what are they seeing exactly?
Well, the broadsheet goes all in on it, like what it means religiously. This wasn't just some weird thing in the sky for these people.
Right, because the Reformation's going on. They're already questioning everything.
Yeah, totally. And to them, this wasn't just astronomy. It was a sign from God.
Uh-huh. A message, like straight from God.
Right.
Okay? So the broadsheet doesn't mess around, right? It goes into all these wild details, like blood red arcs right in the sun, and then a giant black sphere.
And spheres, yeah. Tons of them. Other objects, too, just zipping around all over the sky, fighting each other.
Fighting, that's what it said.
Yep.
Fighting amongst themselves.
Wow.
It's like apocalyptic, right? Like the end of the world. Then the objects fall down to Earth. And they're like, brrr, leaving smoke trails and everything. And then to top it off,
Oh, there's more.
a black sphere. It just appears up in the sky.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, you can just feel it, like reading the broadsheet, you can sense the fear and the awe, I guess. This wasn't just something they saw. It was like an experience.
Right. So everyone sees this insane event. And the broadsheet, the newspaper, it tells them straight up, it's a message from God. But before we get into the interpretations, can we talk about the woodcut that's in the broadsheet with the text? Because I've heard it's not just a simple picture.
Oh, yeah, no, the woodcut's important, like super important. It shows all these things, crosses, spheres, crescent shapes, and that black spear. I mean, on one hand, sure, it's just showing what people saw, right? But remember, 16th century, symbols mean something, especially in religion.
So, what are we seeing then? What would those symbols tell someone, a Catholic back then in 1561? Let's take the cross, for instance. Christianity. It's like the main symbol, right? Especially for Catholics. Seeing it with these weird objects that would tell them this came from God, that this whole thing was a message. And then there are the spheres. People back then, they used spheres to show the stars and planets. But seeing them, fighting, falling to earth, that'd be like watching the laws of nature break.
Yeah, like everything's going wrong. The whole world's messed up.
Exactly.
So it's like the woodcut's not just showing what they saw, but how they felt too. Scared, confused. Like, is the world ending? It's like this battle in the sky was, mirroring the Reformation. The Catholic Church is breaking apart, and now it's happening in the heavens too.
That's a good point. And you got to remember, the Reformation wasn't just about religion, it was political too. Powerful people were fighting. Countries were choosing sides. Wars were breaking out all over. The Catholic Church, the one big power, was being challenged. People were questioning it. And this woodcut with the broadsheet, it's like a visual sermon, reminding people that God's powerful, and if you stray from the church, from the true faith, you're going to have problems. And think about it. This broadsheet, it wasn't like some boring book. It was meant to be read out loud, shared around. People would argue about it.
Like debated what it all meant.
Exactly.
Man, it must have been so scary for them. Like back then, they really believed in signs, you know, like omens and stuff.
Oh, totally.
To actually see something like this up in the sky, be like a prophecy happening right in front of you.
For sure. And the broadsheet, it plays into that, right? The fear, God's going to punish everyone, the whole world's sinful.
Yeah, you can almost hear it, right? Like some preacher yelling at you, repent, the end is near. There's that one line, I don't know why, but it stuck with me. It says, whatever such signs mean, God alone knows.
Yeah.
Like, that's heavy, right?
It is, because it's saying, okay, we don't know exactly what God's thinking, but it's still a sign.
Yeah, like, it means something.
Exactly. It's not random. This is God talking to us. We just got to figure out what he's trying to say.
And for a good Catholic back then, the message is pretty clear, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is a warning. God's not happy. The church is a mess. The Reformation is challenging everything.
Right. And it's not just the pictures, the symbols that tell you this. There's other stuff in there, too, little details. It says the objects came out of the sun.
Out of the sun. Why is that a big deal?
Well, the sun, right. It's like the source of everything.
Right.
Life, light. It's even a symbol for God in some places.
That makes sense.
So to have these weird, scary things coming from the sun, that would be like violating the natural order. Something's really wrong.
Yeah, like messed up. It's almost like the sky itself is a reflection of what's going on down here. The Reformation's tearing the church apart, and now the sun's spitting out, I don't know, demons.
And then there's another part that talks about how they fought amongst themselves.
Right, like a battle up in the sky. What do you think that meant to them?
Hard to say, really, but it definitely adds to the chaos, the scariness. Were they fighting for good versus evil, angels against demons, or was it something even weirder, something we can't even imagine? The broadsheet doesn't tell you, and that just makes it even more unsettling.
And then it describes them falling to the earth, right? It says they fell from the sun down upon the earth as if they all burned, and they then wasted away on the earth with immense smoke.
Whoa.
Intense, right?
Yeah, super intense, like fire and brimstone, the end of days. And if you really believed in hell like they did back then.
Oh, yeah. That would freak you out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, so we've got this incredible description, these symbols, this whole idea of God punishing everyone. It's pretty obvious how a good Catholic would have interpreted this, right? But what about everyone else? Were there other explanations going around back then?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, even with the Reformation happening, not everyone was, like, totally on board with all that, you know, the signs and warnings and stuff.
Right. Some people probably thought it was just a natural event.
Totally. Some people were skeptics. And, you know, you can even see that a little bit in the broadsheet itself.
Really?
Yeah. The guy who wrote it, he actually warns people about making fun of the event or saying it was just, like, a normal thing.
Oh, interesting. So he knew not everyone would believe it was from God.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of shows how nervous everyone was back then.
Like the church was losing power.
Right. And the people who wanted the old ways, they were desperate to keep things the same. So they said this event was a message from God. It was a way to show they were still in charge, you know.
It's like saying, hey, look, God's on our side. He's sending us messages. If you don't listen, you'll be in trouble.
Exactly. And you got to remember, back then, people really believed in miracles and demons and, like, the stars controlling everything. So, yeah, most people probably thought this event was religious.
But even if we forget about all that, it's still a super weird event.
Yeah.
Like, people are still talking about it today.
Yeah, it's a real mystery.
Like, some people think it was aliens.
Yeah. Ufologists, they point to Nuremberg as proof that we've been visited by, you know, extraterrestrials.
I mean, it sounds crazy, but who knows? Maybe we'll figure it out someday.
Right. Maybe what seemed impossible back then is totally normal now.
True. But even if we never figure out exactly what happened in Nuremberg, we can still learn from it. Like how people back then tried to understand it.
Oh, yeah, totally. It tells us so much about how they saw the world, what they were afraid of, what they hoped for.
It's like a time capsule.
And it reminds us that we're not so different from them, you know? We try to explain things based on what we believe and the world we live in.
So what's the takeaway here? What does this crazy sky event, almost 500 years ago, tell us about ourselves? About how humans deal with stuff we don't understand?
Well, I think it shows how powerful beliefs are. Like, how we see the world affects how we see everything else.
Right.
And it shows how fear and uncertainty can make us do, well, anything, really. Like, we got to find an answer, even if it's not the right one.
It's like a warning, right? To think critically, not just believe everything we hear.
Exactly. And to be open to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there's more out there than we can even imagine.
Like that.
The Nuremberg event, whether it was a sign from God or a natural phenomenon or something else entirely, it still makes people think. It reminds us that humans always want to find meaning, you know. We're still doing it today, just like they were back in Nuremberg all those years ago.
So the next time you're looking up at the stars, you start thinking about all the mysteries out there, all the stuff we don't know, remember Nuremberg. And remember those people trying to figure out a world that felt like it was falling apart, and ask yourself, what would you do? How would you explain the unexplainable?